Hi, Leah. How are you?
Good, Rose. How are you?
Good. I didn't realize, but your hair matches the logo on the top, so I think it's.
So I'm meant
um,
to be here. I'm meant to be here, and I could be your mascot as well.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I thought it would make a really nice conversation to speak to you because it's a very interesting industry that you work for, and I believe that HR is done a little bit different for your industry. We'll get onto that. But before we kind of deep dive into the conversation, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about your story, what your company does, and yeah, we take it from there.
All right. So I'm Leasha Naidoo, but everybody calls me Lee, which I prefer and I like. And I think if you looked at my LinkedIn bio, I call myself the accidental entrepreneur. And the reason I call myself that is because there was never an intention for me to be an entrepreneur. I don't think that it was on my list of priorities. I was actually quite fearful of being an entrepreneur. And I think because I come from a background where my dad was in bad business and it didn't end very well. So I automatically had red no-go signs when it came to entrepreneurship. And so it evolved into a space where I studied my chartered accounting articles, and then I decided to go into the corporate world as a financial manager, which in itself is actually a very stressful job. Your month ends just flow into each other. And how it all happened was that as a mom, as a wife, I wanted to start a family, and I couldn't. So I was having quite a difficult time in starting to, get our family going. And Cam, who's my husband and business partner, said to me, "Why don't you just, take some time off work, come work in the business. You can do sort of invoicing every 2 days." And I thought, well, that sounds like a really good deal. Can't pass that deal up. And so that's when I joined Gorilla, which is our creative agency, a traditional, anti-traditional creative agency. And it exploded. And so 6 months after I became an entrepreneur and joined the business in the role as managing director, I fell pregnant. And so I always say, as my belly grew, so did the business. So it is beautiful to see. There wasn't much structure in the business, and with my training and education, I'm very much a structured person. So I was able to bring that to the business. And then a few years later, we opened up, as co-founders, Cam and I, we opened up our creative tech agency called FOXTROT. So currently, those are the two businesses that we're running, and that's taking quite a bit of our time. And yeah, that's how we sort of got here.
Yeah, it's so nice to hear the background, of how everything started, because everybody has obviously a different background. And to me, it's really interesting what you're saying. What were those preconceptions of like owning your own business and working for your own business? And also the fact that, like you work with your husband. I'd love to hear how, how that turned out to be, because I'm sure it was like, you learn as you go. And yeah, and you got to the point. Also, you started in Johannesburg, and then you guys
Correct.
decided to move. So I'm sure that was also a really big move because I mean, how you break it to your team. Like we are moving to Cape Town, and I take there was that invitation to say you guys are welcome to come, but at the same time, that people have their lives outside. I'd love to hear a little bit about that process.
So it was quite a difficult process. Cam and I were sort of, brought up in Joburg. It was home, our family was there. And I think personally and from a business perspective, we decided to make the move. We really do believe that Cape Town is amazing for bringing up families, but also Cape Town is, starting to become what everybody's termed Silicon Cape. So there's a lot of tech businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs in that space, tech focused. And even if they aren't tech focused, they're bringing tech massively into their business. And we've seen a migration of quite the big companies, and the headquarters actually also moving. So I mean, we've got Amazon here, and a lot of companies are actually building the head office is here, as opposed to Joburg, which is usually very standard. So I'd like to say we were the head of the curve with this immigration. And it was scary for all of us. And we did tell our team, look, guys, this is the decision that we're going to make, and it's up to you to decide whether you'd like to be part of the journey with us or not. If I'm honest with you, from a staff at that point of 15, one person took the offer. So we had one person take the offer, and I think it was quite surprising that the person that took the offer has his own family. So he had a wife and a child, whereas a lot of the rest of our team did not have that. They didn't have families with kids. They're all quite young, and they just didn't want to do the move. So again, there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to Cape Town. But moving here has, it's been great from a business perspective. I think COVID was amazing because it sort of taught our clients that we don't need to be there face to face, which before was a mandatory. So, we didn't actually lose touch with our clients, which is really nice. So yeah, but the workforce in Cape Town is something very different, and it took us a long time to get used to it. But I think we're finally settling in on that.
Yes, I remember when we started to engage in conversation, it was very much that time where you had made the move to Cape Town, and it was all about, getting the team on board. And I remember you mentioning this, there was a little bit of that kind of like cultural shock from city to city in terms of how, people work. And I also know that because you are a media agency and you have creatives on board, that's also a particular type of skill set as well as environment that you need to create. And as you said, you come from a different background. So what were those kind of news or things that you have to wake up to kind of get the team of creatives going and then the move to Cape Town? I'd love to hear from that.
So I think I may be generalizing when I speak about the workforce now. So I hope I don't get in any, get under anybody's skin for saying it. So what we found was when comparing the workforce in Johannesburg, it is basically like you're riding on a treadmill. So you're running constantly, and it goes down from CEO level all the way into entry level. You are running on a treadmill, and you've got to keep that treadmill going. And not for the sake of, if you stop the treadmill, everything's going to stop, but more for the sake of, ambition. So you're doing it because you're ambitious and you want to climb up and you want to do more and you want to have, up your skills. And then when you came to Cape Town, the difference is there is a massive need here for a work-life balance. And the workforce here seems to enforce that and protect that very much. So I think everybody's, quite well known with the fact that the workforce in Joburg is very different to the workforce in KZN, which is also very different to the workforce in Cape Town. But we did not realize it would have been that much of a culture shock. I think, Rose, as you know, we had 100% staff turnover in the first 2 years of being here. Also coming from Joburg, where we had a massive network, and you're starting in Cape Town, where we had, some network, but not as big as we had in Cape Town. The staffing process got difficult in that we were relying on people totally new. There were no references from them. And so, it literally was, let's try. Let's pray and pray. We know nothing about this person, but let's give it a shot. So we also had to step out of our comfort zone in just being open, to introduce new talent to ourselves, but also to understand that work-life balance. And so when somebody says it in an interview, this is what they like doing. And it's generally things. It's like, I like hiking, I like yoga, I like meditation, I like watching sunsets on the beach. So you sort of have to look at that and say like, okay, I respect that. But also I've got this work environment, and I personally am very honest about our work environment. So I wouldn't want a possible employee or an employee to come here and they get a massive total shock of, oh, okay, this is something crazy. So I try as much as possible from interview state to start saying, this is what it is. This is what you're coming into. Be sure this is what you want to come into. And if not, I'll totally understand. So yeah, it was a massive adjustment for us.
Yeah, I hear you. I think what would be interesting to also understand is, because you mentioned it as well, that has the company changed from a kind of revenue making since the cities changed with these different kind of work styles? Have you seen differences, or is it like actually, it's our projections continued the same, or they did change for the better, or did that change of city allow for the company to grow and with a different staff complement and kind of different needs, or it actually didn't change? Because I'm thinking that when you go through that process of having people that are bringing you their needs and you kind of putting boundaries with a life work balance, as a business owner, you do fear that, okay, now is it going to be as effective as it used to be when people were not bringing this into a conversation in a different city? So did it actually change, or you feel like, no, it actually, it was the same?
I don't think it changed from a profitability perspective, because I do feel that your senior management and your directorship is responsible for your strategy, your business strategy. So it's all up to them on, how we're going to get more profitable. What kind of resources do we actually need to make us profitable? But I wouldn't say that it changed from a revenue perspective. We're blessed enough that our 2021 year was the best year that we've had to date in the 10 years that we've had Gorilla open. And so that was amazing, and I think something that happened from a human resources perspective, or human capital, which is what I like to call them, is that a lot of people were scared. They were scared of what was post-COVID. Are there going to be jobs that become redundant? What's going to happen to businesses who have suffered massive hits in their revenue? I'm talking about the big businesses as well. Are there going to be job cuts? So everybody sort of, for the first year or so, I would say until we got our vaccines, everybody just wanted to stay where they were because it was safe. So everybody just wanted to be safe until we got a little bit more, thinking, okay, we could actually do this. Let's go out and put our feet in the water. So yeah, that's what we saw.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I can completely get, you have a massive drive. It's something that every time I talk to you, you're on a mission. You can tell, and I know how it feels. You have to, when you need that team that's there, with you. But I understand that you also have to adjust to kind of the different paces. And also, when it comes to your particular industry, how is that process of recruiting creatives? Because as we know, with creatives, that they need that space to create. So how has it been from, knowing that, okay, you're resourcing the company with the right people, giving them their space, but also making sure that you stay ambitious and on time with projects? And how has that process been for you?
So I think there was a lot of learning, and what I like to say, in the space of human assets, is that as owners or as management, every time your staff grows, you also have to rationalize and understand the fact that you've never managed 20 people before. So if you go from 18 to 20, you have to be able to understand, I've never managed 18 people before, I've never managed 20. So it's a learning experience for everybody. And those that are in management need to be able to understand that and give themselves grace as well as the staff grace. So I think that's super important. I think something that's changed in the workforce is that there is obviously an influx of the Gen Zs into the workforce. And that it's a double-edged sword because it's got its pros and cons. So, the pros are the Gen Zs, they're full of ideas. They all are quite ambitious as well. just really good energy, and they want to learn new things, which is amazing. But on the other hand, there's not a lot of loyalty that lies with the Gen Zs. And it's something across, not just from a workplace, but even from a purchasing perspective, there's not much loyalty that Gen Zs tend to have. So that has been difficult. And I think to counteract that, what Cav and I do is, and it's our motto, is we want to have a space to create. So we want the space, even if it's a physical space within our offices, to be very, very comfortable and creative, for all our teams. So as an example, we've got an Xbox in the office that the guys can literally just pick up and play whenever they want. We've got pool tables. They'll have drinks every now and then. It doesn't have to mean that it's on a specific day. We try to go out with the staff and do quite a bit of team building. And there's just lots of stuff that we add in that everybody just loves. And so, that all is part of that space to create. So giving them creative freedom, giving them creative license. And what we find is, which makes me feel really good, is, when it hits 5, even our staff that don't have anything more to do will stay in the space. They'll have, Xbox competitions, or they're watching a show on Netflix because there's Netflix here. Or, they're just relaxing and chilling and talking and playing music. There's constantly music here. So yeah, I think it's very, very key to understand your workforce, to understand their needs and their requirements, sort of match them to your business principles, and then give them that space to create, which is not always easy, because in the same time, you have a lot of pressure. So as much as you want them to play Xbox and play pool on the pool table, there sometimes isn't enough time for them to do it. And so you have to protect them in the same way. You have to protect them. I think that one of the key things that we've had is the pulse check-ins. Those have been really, really important that you guys have set up for us. It shows their stress levels, it shows their energy levels, and generally it will correlate to each other. If they're stressed, the energy levels are going to be down. It also helps us just, keep track of, okay, is somebody heading towards burnout? Because a lot of them, especially the Gen Zs, the communication is also difficult. Because I think it's like, I'm young and I'm cool, and, I don't need to speak about my mental well-being. And so those pulses actually help them to be anonymous, but also to the fact that it's going directly to us, so it's confidential. That has helped us quite a bit. And then again, just creating an environment of an open door policy within the organization. So it doesn't matter who you are. You can walk into the director's offices. You can tell us about your family. You can tell us about something that we need to get done. You can tell us something that you're not happy with. And so we try to do those regular check-ins. And, one of the spaces we have this, it's actually supposed to be the brainstorm table. So it's this massive table, it's got chairs all around. And it's actually turned into our lunch table. And what generally happens is between 12 and 2, when everybody's taking their lunch, everybody ends up sitting around the table, including Cam and I, management, the entire team. And it ends up being like this big family lunch where we're all speaking and talking and laughing. And I think that's also an amazing way to connect. And nobody feels, it's nice because nobody feels scared to come and eat their lunch with Cam and I. And we aren't feeling awkward to go eat our lunch with our staff. We just sit, and, that creates really nice bonding moments.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that, since the beginning with engaging with you, something that I really like about what you do in your company is that you always speak your mind. So I feel like that transparency that you have in terms of like all goes, right, from your point of view, or you also want to hear everything, I think that really fits into how everybody in your company knows that they have a place, and that there's, anything that they need to come to you for, they will. And it's that kind of initiatives that you do, like the casual lunch, that it really gives people, I guess, the feeling that, yeah, you know, like we have a place here. Especially with Gen Zs, what I find is that they crave for belonging and for mission, right? Like, so, and you can understand not necessarily only from a Gen Z point of view, but any new generation that comes into a workforce, they're new. They don't know what to expect. It's probably first time employment, and they don't necessarily have been exposed too much to know like what they want to strive for, what they really, you know, are enjoying. And so they really crave that belongingness and that hopping into the mission. So that takes me to my next question. What feels like success in your company? Like, where are those moments that you celebrate with your staff? Because I know you also work quite project-based. So when does a team get to celebrate and say, well done, we all pulled together and got a great job done?
So I think that takes time and a lot of curation. It doesn't happen organically at first. You do have to curate it and massage that process in and infiltrate into your workforce. But I do feel, you know, the things that give us gratification. I'm classified as an empath, so I think part of my role is very much to understand everybody's emotions. I'm able to feel the emotions. I'm able to, you know, give them advice. And, you know, I end up becoming like that big sister that nobody asked for. And they'll come tell me about this, or they'll come tell me about this. So I know about their dating lives. I know about their home lives. I know if they're moving house. You know, I'm the one they come to, and it's absolutely, you know, not required. If they're going to take a new lease, they'll come and ask me to please check through their lease for them, and see if I have any questions. I think fostering that openness is, you know, one of the things that I see as a success for myself. I think, you know, the ability to give recognition is massive. It is massive for any workforce. And sometimes, as I said before, you're so much on this treadmill of business and you're just running and running and you're focused on the clients and outputs and profits and revenue that you forget about the team that is actually doing the running with you and turning the wheels with you. And you need to give that recognition, not to the entire company, which you can do. You know, we've won a pitch and we'll have all of them together, and we're not letting just the people that worked on the pitch know. We call all our team together and we're like, guys, we've won this pitch. We couldn't have done it without you. You know, it's all your hard work. And I think another thing that we do is we foster the environment of togetherness, in that if my team is working, regardless of what happens, management is working too. So you're not alone in this. We're a team always. Even though we have families, some of us have to work from home, some of us can work in the office at that time, but we've all done it together and you're not alone. We're all working for the same goal. And that really helps, you know, with the overall feeling that the team have when we're all driving to one goal. And it can be, you know, pretty hectic in these pitches and quite brutal. And so just understanding that. So, you know, that's how we foster it, by just working alongside our staff. And I think one of the comments that I heard from quite a few people that have come on board is sometimes they only find out months after they're employed that Cam and I are actually the directors and the shareholders of the company. So they're expecting some other people, and then somebody would say, do you know that's a director? And they're like, oh, we've never worked this closely with the director. And I'm just like, we're still normal people, guys. We're just humans, just like you are. And we all have the same need states. You know, so I think that's what we love, is that connection with our team, working together with our team, to actually create and to live and breathe the fact that we are a team. Nobody works in isolation. There's no, you know, we're not going to keep you to one job. And if, you know, everybody helps everybody out. And we really like that. It's very much, look, we are smaller, so that creating that family environment is quite easy for us. And, you know, so giving recognition when we can and as often as we can. And look, so for some of them, it's a two-part thing, because, you know, for some of them, yes, it is financial. But if you understand their background, if you understand their life, you'd be able to understand, okay, this person, what is going to help them? Is it going to be me just patting them on the back because maybe they have a little bit of, some self-esteem issues, or a lot of the creatives you find would feel like they don't think they're meant to be what they are. So they feel like they're faking it. And they aren't. They're brilliant creatives, but they just feel like they're faking it, and it's all just a fluke. Every day is a fluke. And to get that, to say, no, it's not. You're actually brilliant. And, this is where I see you actually coming alive. I see you in this. I see you when I give you this work. It's amazing. And you need to recognize that, and you need to be able to communicate that with them. And, so that's one thing, is the remuneration is obviously, nobody gets into the workforce to not make money. It's understandable. So, giving remuneration as and when you can. Us personally, we don't work on remuneration once a year. It's as and when we feel you deserve it. So if you are becoming more valuable to the business needs to show you that from a monetary compensation perspective. If we're winning, everybody needs to win with us. It's not just like, and I know it gets different for bigger businesses and other shareholders, but I'm speaking about the SME kind of businesses, speaking to them. That's highly important, to take your staff on the ride with you. And I feel like, back in my day, when I was in the corporate world, and I'm a millennial, we automatically, any job we took, we automatically felt ownership in that job. So we automatically felt like we were the shareholders in that job. So everything needed to be done to the best of our capabilities. We needed to protect that business. And that mindset has changed in the new workforce. I think another thing, so we've spoken about, being one with your team, being empathetic and understanding their needs, definitely, being open to new and different ideas. Another thing is, if we see our workforce or specific people in the workforce, we can see them tiring. And, if you just pay attention, it's easy to see that. And if you see that, recognizing it, maybe without saying it, but going up to the person and saying, you know what, you've been doing such a great job. Let's take an extra day off. Don't put in a leave form. Don't worry about it. Just take a day off. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to watch a new movie? Do you want to go surfing? Do you want to go cycling? Do whatever you want. Just don't come to work and don't answer any calls. We're not going to bother you. Just enjoy yourself and just take a break. So that has become something that I think the staff enjoy. And I think lastly, it's just development, right? Development of them as a human being, and development of them as a professional. Our motto here is, we've done our job if our staff leave better than when they started. So as long as you leave our doors better than when you started, I feel like we've done our job, and there's no hard feelings. Obviously, better opportunities exist. Creatives get bored very quickly, so they do tend to job hop quite a lot. And that's just part of the course in the creative and tech space. But just, make it known that you are and you want them to develop. So we often have conversations about, what would you like? Where do you feel like you want to learn more? And somebody would say, as an example, I want to learn more in the visual effects. And so we would pair them with somebody that is much more senior in visual effects, and just let them see how the process works and get them involved. And I think that really, really excites the team.
Yeah, so many things to what you had to say. I think it comes so natural to you, and it is quite because you come from a finance background, but you are, as you said, you read people really well, and it's almost so natural for you when someone comes in the door and you kind of, are really in tune how they're feeling, their story, what they're going through, and it's definitely not to take for granted, because not many people in the capacity of, the executive team, the MD can. It's a lot of energy that it takes for some people to have to do that work. But the reality is, when you are like that and you invest your time in that, it really does, come back to everybody in the company for that, beautiful feel of what it means to come to work, and then it kind of benefits everybody. I know, of other businesses where that is not necessarily there, and it really is a different vibe. And you said, that is how mostly SMEs, you can have more of those type of interactions. And the reality is that SA, it's mostly, like based on SMEs, right? So it is something to be said about the way that we like to work, here, with that level of personal interactions. I always said, you invest yourself in someone, and I see the difference when you put of your time to know more about another person, then you know that you have them back invested in you and what the company is doing. So it is quite crucial. And then what I really enjoyed what you had to say, again, because you are in a very specific industry, is that the psychology of the people that work for you. So usually, like, what does that journey look like for someone that became a creative? What are those kind of like, they suffer from imposter syndrome. They don't realize that they're brilliant. So you have to remarket for them. And I think that's quite unique, because not everybody has that capacity that you have to see that brilliance, right? It is the creative in you, the creative in camp, that can identify it and work with them. So you're almost like doing therapy for them to kind of like explore that brilliancy, right? And get them to that genius zone. And I can only imagine how much time, although it might come natural to you, but how much time it takes from you, to always be, there doing that work, while also looking at the business, how the business runs and how the business is performing. But what I want to touch base with you, because you walked that journey with a couple of people, you have also had those moments where you invested a lot of time, a lot of care for a lot of years, and then you do have the people that say, look, like, I'm going to go for something else. And you said, that's welcome. At the end of the day, they're better off or they're leaving. But I can only imagine, when you put so much of yourself into someone else, how that feels like. So I'd love to hear from you what have been those situations that you had to navigate that were really tough from a people point of view.
I think, in every business, I think that you need to have a balance, and it's actually a balance between people, and specifically management and the entrepreneurs and the founders. So if you as a founder would say, look, I'm not really great with the people, I just want to get work done. If they don't like being here, let them go. Find somebody who's the total opposite of that. And I think that's why Cam and I work so well together, is because we're polar opposites. Cam is, he's very goal focused. This is the goal he needs to meet. This is the deadline he needs to meet, especially in his creative space. And that's what he needs to do. And I'm the same, but I'm also able to just read people. And to a fault, I will get very emotionally invested in my people. And that can be very difficult, especially when you have taken somebody from probably a different role, because you've seen this person has the ability to grow, this person has the ambition. And Cam and I always say is the technical side of things, so your degrees, how proficient you are in certain skills, we can teach that. It's absolutely a teachable thing. But what we can't teach you is your general attitude and your outlook on life. We cannot change that, as well as your interpersonal skills. I can't change that. That is inherent to who you are, and I can't change that. So the other stuff I can teach. And so, even when we look at CVs, it's less about ticking boxes, and it's more about, is this somebody that would fit the culture? Is this somebody that would benefit from our culture? Is this somebody that wants and has a hunger to learn and become more? Because that's ultimately the environment we want to foster. And so they get in, you put a lot of work and a lot of effort, and for me, a lot of care into them, and then they decide to just leave. And I'll be honest, I've taken it very difficult for quite a lot of my staff that have worked for us, specifically the ones that work very close to me. I do take it quite personal, and I'm sitting very much on the management admin side of the business. So it almost seems like I expect it for the creatives, and I'm like, I know it's coming. And I can also I can almost sense it when it starts to happen, when they start becoming unsettled. I can sense it. So I know, okay, this is, give it a month, give it 2 months, but they're eventually, going to want to look elsewhere. And I will try to circumvent and have open chats with them. Sometimes they're closed up because they've already made that decision to move on. But on my side, it's very difficult. And I've cried when somebody's left. I've honestly cried when people who I've taken, care of and really put a lot of myself in have left, and they generally have left in a way that I did not expect them to leave. So they would leave, I've taught you and I've said to you, this is how we need to be professional, and this is the kind of nature that we want to foster here. So when it comes, when the leaving comes down to being, very harsh, very, I don't want to say mysterious, but almost, everything is done behind closed doors and you don't see it coming. That for me is very discouraging. But I cannot let one person change my entire outlook and change who I am. I can definitely, I keep my guard up a bit more, especially at first. But, there's some people that are in it for good. And, there's some of my staff members who I would absolutely be friends with outside of the office. Absolutely, 100%. We would be great friends outside the office. But I've had to keep that balance. I've had to close that door. We'd be going to braais at each other's houses and going out for girls' nights or, just fun nights. And I have to be like, no, I can't cross that boundary at all. So, putting up boundaries, but not high walls is going to be important. And, the more of the wall you put up, the less you can give, the less you can transfer. So it's also important that you're flexible with that.
Yeah, I hear you. And I know that that like every time that you have been through one of those, tough realizations, something happens, you need time off to actually process what has happened, but it has always felt like an opportunity after. So yes, the landscape changes after that person is not there any longer, but then there's always like, okay, we can think of new ways of doing things, or whoever we think of bringing next, maybe we should consider, this other approach. So I think you always manage to turn it into, we can now reconsider what we need and bring that fresh approach of something new, to say it in a way.
No, 100%. And I think it's almost like any relationship when you're in that dating state of your life. And so you'd be in a relationship and then you'd realize, well, I didn't really like the way this person, was non-committal. And so we really ended the relationship because somebody was non-committal. Or I didn't like the way this person, spoke or treated my family. And then that therefore says that you value your family and you need somebody who's able to value their family and your family as well. So I think that is it's still a relationship, regardless of the context, it's still a relationship. So take that into the workplace. And when somebody does leave, look at it and say to yourself, okay, what can I learn from this? I can learn, there's many things that I can learn. And one of the things that I tend to look at more is the person's background. So when we're in the interview, one of my very first questions are to tell me about yourself. And don't tell me I'm this age, I live here. Tell me what you enjoy. Tell me what your family situation is like. Do you have kids? How old are your kids? Do you have support in Cape Town? All of that makes such a difference. It makes such a difference just understanding where they are, because you learn things like a lot of the people here, they have dependents and they aren't their children. It's their grandparents, it's parents, it's siblings. And so to understand that dynamic is super important, because I need to understand, young as this kid is, as much as he's living a great life in Cape Town and, they go out and they try to, enjoy themselves, but he's got responsibilities.
Yeah.
And so I have to also be aware of those responsibilities and treat him accordingly and understand accordingly. So yeah, I think that's a big thing. It's just the learnings you take from people leaving, and how you take that and implement it in future.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's something that I actually never heard before, but so true. You need to understand the person's responsibilities because you're kind of marrying those responsibilities, right? Like the moment you sign their contract, you're marrying those responsibilities. And that's the thing with founders, that all of those things go somehow unsaid, but they're always in the back of your shoulders, right? Like all the responsibilities from the people that you look after, they're also, like you're kind of like it bounces to you. And I think that is very much, again, another quite unique aspect of like working in South Africa. It is that kind of SME environment, but also that environment where we're all deeply connected in terms of what's happening, at home. And so yeah, it's something to always keep in mind when it comes to building your team. Well, what practices from an HR point of view in your agency, what HR practice is the one that you would say, this has been quite transformational from us? I mean, you did speak about your casual moments with your staff members and that, bringing that kind of moments of like sharing. But I'd love to know if there's anything that you look back and you would say, this is something that we implemented and it really had a positive effect, be it when you recruit or how you go about your legal proceedings or anything that you've thought this is brilliant and I want to keep on doing it.
So I think I also mentioned the pulse. The pulse for me is, any starting business owner, do the pulse. Do the pulse. It's super important. You're going to learn a lot from your staff. Performance reviews are great as well. I think it just gives them an opportunity to just be open and honest with you. And if you're able to sit there and listen, and I mean really listen, you will hear the things that come out. So that's something that's been super important to us. And understanding our staff, and like I said, understanding their background. Open lines of communication is just so important. And I think it doesn't matter what level you are, how busy you are, if you have human capital, if you have human assets, you need to pay attention to it. And you just can't be sort of like, well, here they are, they get paid to do a job, do your job. And a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, I'm pretty sure. But that's what I found has worked very well and fostered the environment to be that way. And also have key people that you're willing to trust your human capital with. So I'm always able to trust my human capital with certain people. And open and honesty. Always be open and honest. And Cam and I will tell our staff, obviously, financial information, which is, confidential, but we'll tell our staff, we're like, guys, we're going to Joburg for the next week. We're meeting different clients. We are, this client wants to meet us for potential work, They know all of it. They know all of it because it also preps their mind. And they can also see us being driven and driving, and hopefully that helps them do the same thing. Yeah, and again, just understanding, where they're coming from. Cam and I always say, there's a lot of pressure put onto entrepreneurs and founders, and that is just of being successful. You feel like there's all eyes on you. Everybody's looking, and you're almost scared for it to be a failure. But if it is, you take a learning out of it and you get up and you try again. But I always say to Cam, we need to realize and we have to take this load when we decide to become bosses or, whatever that we start to employ, is that you're not just responsible for that one person anymore. You are responsible for that person and everybody that person is responsible for. So when I start counting up 30 staff, I start counting, well, okay, this person's got 2 kids and a husband and a brother that all are dependent on her. That's not one mouth. Then I've got like 6 mouths there to feed. And then I've got this many mouths to feed here because this guy's taking care of his grandparents. And then I've got, this many mouths here because, and then you add up the mouths that you are actually responsible for. And it is a lot of mouths. And you need to take that seriously. You need to take it seriously. And again, like I said, the open and honesty. If things aren't going well, you got to tell the staff, guys, it's a season, but we're going to get through it. At the moment in our agency specifically, we are just working like, I have no words. It's almost psychotic. It's bordering on psychotic the way we're working. But we've said to our team in these instances, we said, guys, we're all working for this together. This is what we're going to go through. But we're all going to come out better at the end of the day. And like I said, when we win, you win. And also being able to put boundaries in place between your clients and your team, which I feel like doesn't happen very often because as founders and directors in businesses, we tend to have and keep relationships with our clients very closely. So you don't generally have somebody that's managing this client on their own. They may be, but you're still quite a part of it. You're quite a big part of it. And I think, in those instances, you need to be able to protect your people. And as an example, we shut down our agency from the first week in December to the first week in Jan. And so I don't do that because I want to go on a holiday or it's fun, because a lot of our clients are still working through that, especially our clients who are from overseas. Christmas is not something that's amazing there. They're into the summer holidays, which is now. And I protect my team. So months from about October of the year, I start sending out emails. Guys, please note, this is our closing dates. I will not have anybody here. If it's an extreme emergency and we need to get something out, I will make sure I can handle that for you. But please note, we are closing shop. And that is so that my team can be revitalized and really have time to turn off. So them realizing that I am protective of them and I have their best interests at heart, that also goes a long way. So protect your team, protect your teams as well, protect them. And especially if you want to keep them, protect them.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I love that, because I think it's especially for agency work where there is, as you said, this connection in between clients and your internal team. And then there's that need for you to be there, have that oversight and know that how those dynamics are going. As you said, keeping an eye on how everybody in your team is doing. It's so important. And I think it's specifically relevant for agency work more than any other type of setup. What I also really enjoy what you said is, on the performance review, because I think you have quite a different way to look at it, which I really enjoy. And it's more that it's a listening time for you. And it's not so much, for to tell you how your performance is. It's more around how have you been doing, and you tell us how things are going for you. I feel like that creates such a positive way to look at performance, right? And the reviews, and also the whole accountability thing, right? It's like, I actually want to hear, what you have to say about what has gone really well for you, what have you really enjoyed, and that's a really nice way to see it. And yeah, I find that, it's different from the traditional, which is more like, you just kind of like have a rating scale, and you have to, the way you do it it's quite unique. You really take up that space to know how that person in front of you is doing, which I think is great. So yeah, I think all in all, what I see with you, Leah, is that you definitely do things differently from the norm, and you shape your own way of doing things, and it works for you. And then the people that hop on board, they're fully on board. And I think it really speaks to your industry as well. You need those differentiators to come through, to give an edge to your agency, which I know they do. So how special that you get so involved in making sure that the right practices are in place. And for me, how deep you go into psychology of like, I know what people go through when it comes to specific roles that we have, and really help them on that journey. That is really special.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, things that have come into focus quite a bit over the last few years, and definitely post-COVID, is mental health. And I'm somebody that's extremely passionate about mental health. I have my own struggles with mental health, which has been years on. So I'm always doing the check-ins. I'm always, wanting to know from a mental health perspective. And some of the questions that I ask in the interview, like, is there anxieties, is there, and people are generally very open to talk. And I'll say, how do you feel from a mental health and wellness perspective? What are the things that you need, and what are the things that you do, and that, that's going to help you. So again, a lot of listening. And I think another thing which happens in creative industries quite a lot, but I do feel needs to happen more in all industries, is you cannot manage one person the same as the next. You cannot. It is impossible. And I know there's a lot of these colored checks and all of these other cool systems that are in place that you can understand more about a person. But what really matters is listening, understanding that person as a singular human being, because that's what they are, and not having this blanket coverage over everybody. You can't. And, we found it where some of our staff want their handheld as they work. They want somebody to be there to say, oh, this is looking really good, or maybe we should consider this. Others don't want that. They don't want you hanging over their shoulder. They don't want you near them. They want to be in the zone. They put their headphones on and they work. And that is just the way they work. So you can't have blanket processes and blanket procedures where, I could say, well, 2 examples. Nobody's allowed to have headphones on because if somebody's speaking to you, you can't hear what they're saying. Everybody's allowed to have headphones on, be listening to whatever they want to listen to. If somebody wants to speak to you, walk up, even if it's your manager or your boss, tap you on the shoulder. It's not going to kill anybody to walk a few steps. And, in the same breath, give them those liberties. Like, we understand some people like to work hybrid. So we give them that opportunity to say, when you feel like you just want to get away from the clutter and you just want to focus in on something, work from home. Work from home. Just tell us you're working from home and do that. So no two people can be managed the same. And you need to understand that, conform to that. And I think it makes a world of difference when you actually start doing that. So you actually start listening to what this person likes. And it goes down to the smallest things, like some of them like to sketch before they work. Some of them want to have different pens because they like different colors when they're sketching out or adding information to their books as they're working. Those things are important, and those things show you have value to me. And I want you to be the best and most comfortable in the work that you're doing. So I'm willing to give this to you, as opposed to everybody put in a status, everybody put in timesheets. I want to know what you're doing. I'm just like, as long as you get the work done, you can take 2 hours, you can take 7. Get your work done. Get it done to a good standard. That's it. So I think, and that can go across all of the industries, I feel, So yeah, that's one of the big realizations, is no two people can be managed the same.
Yeah, I love that. And as you said, not to marry any specific methodology of way around management. It's really more back to basics. Listen to what people, are saying to you. Give them that space to be themselves and to define it for themselves. Some people may need guidelines, especially, and then I'm sure you're happy because you do, you are on it, so you're happy to provide the guidelines. But then you sense when they need, okay, like you need that, you go with it, and that really creates a lovely work environment for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got our development team, our tech team sits in India. So that has been very difficult because we have met a few of them, but we don't see them every day. We're not with them every day. And, and they also manage very differently because they're from different countries. So you also need to take that into your entire situation and all of your understandings and your processes. Is okay, they need to work like this. They even requested changes in our project management systems. They didn't like one that we're using and they're more comfortable with another. We did that, and they're happy. They also like to work mainly in isolation, whereas in the creative space, our creatives need to feed off each other's energies. So they like being together. And then it's also getting that balance right. So getting the team that like to be creative and collaborate into this person actually needs their time and needs to digest things, maybe aren't necessarily as gung-ho and shooting from the hip as you. They like to think, plan, execute, and the thinking and the planning is more important for them. So I think marrying that all up as well, and not having a blanket over this is how everybody works, and also helping people to understand about different cultures and the different jobs, and this is how they like to work in the job. Even something like a lot of our creatives, they watch YouTube when they're working. So they've got their laptops open and they've got YouTube in a little box on the side. And most employers would be like, oh, you're not doing your work. You're sitting here and you're watching TED Talks, or you're watching movies, or you're watching. And for us, it's like whatever's going to get you through the day, whatever it is that you need to get you through the day. And we as founders, employers, need to make those concessions. It's difficult, but make them. It goes a long way than having to supervise them and almost principle them, into specific boxes. I've never found that works.
I hear you. Yeah. You get really challenged in that idea of the traditional kind of work environment that you need to create, and how that the productivity that brings, with specifically again in your industry where you really need to listen to what are those needs and have them, really embrace it, let them say, and then embracing it. And I think you really are at the forefront of that, and it really feels like it's kind of the only way to go these days. It really, if you think about traditional work, and it almost feels like very unnatural and not sustainable. So you've been at the forefront of that for a really long time, and it makes a massive difference in the way you operate and your results. Yeah,
absolutely. And just giving a space to them. What tends to happen in a lot of businesses is at the higher levels, you generally would feel like, I could do that, I could do it quicker, so I'm just going to do it myself. And that's easy enough to say, but then you're not giving that person time to understand it and to get the opportunity to try to do that and learn a new skill. And that's what I find, and especially in fast-paced businesses, that's what we tend to do. We tend to say, well, this person's at a junior level, they're definitely not going to get this, I'm going to give it to somebody at a more senior level. If you can afford, from a timing perspective, forget the profit. If you can afford timing to have somebody learn through the process, do it, because it's going to make them feel a lot more valued. It's going to make them excited about doing something new. And those things are so important. And we generally lose track of it because we're just all got our blinders on. It's about profit. That's what we need. So it's going to be whoever does it quickest and gives you more profitability, it's you. And it goes even into finance, even into when I was in finance. If I was the quickest at completing my month end, I was going to get somebody else's month end to do as well, or another PU's month end to do. And it was great because then, my manager started seeing that, and then she started asking me to do different reports and create different reports. And I loved that, because then I was thrown into a situation where I needed to learn. And I also felt like I was valuable, because this is something that is her responsibility that she's handing over to me. So the sense of ownership really came in, and the fact that I don't want to let it down. And that's me being a financial manager, not even an MD, not even working in a proper finance department.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think probably you draw from that firsthand experience that you had, and you then shaped your company with that in mind, because that's the experience that you had. And that those, to be able to draw on those experiences and know that they are transferable, even though it is a different industry, it's quite key. So it's all, that kind of self-reflection. It really does pour into how you then lead, right? Like the experience that you had. And yeah, It's a wonderful story. And as I said, I do believe that, you know, you do things differently from the rest and you lead from the front and it shows in the results. So wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing that.